Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm Rosie Gill, and I'm the Head of Client Relations for Apprenticeships here at Alliance Manchester Business School, part of the University of Manchester. So I'm delighted today to be hosting this taster session that will give you a flavour of the Accounting and Finance unit on our Level 7 Senior Leader Apprenticeship programme. And today we're going to be exploring the vital role that accountancy and finance plays in society in unlocking sustainable growth. So at Alliance Manchester Business School, we offer a range of executive education programmes, including customised programmes for various organisations, short business courses, which are a suite of programmes about 4 days long in various specialties. And then, of course, the Senior Leader Apprenticeship Level 7, which my colleague Avila is going to go into in more detail in a few minutes. So just to introduce myself, Rosie Gill, just to introduce my colleague Avila, who's joining us on the call and is the Client Relations Manager, who we'll be hearing from a little bit later. So having a look at what we're going to be doing today, after a brief introduction, we'll head into the main body of our webinar, looking at unlocking sustainable growth. And then we'll have a Q&A. So if you have any questions going forward, please pop them in the chat and we can get to them later. As we mentioned before, if you could keep your cameras and microphones off, that would be brilliant. And then my colleague Avila is going to go and tell us a little bit more about the Senior Leader Development Programme once you've had a taster of this particular module. So we're really thrilled to be joined today by Jenny Rose and Patricia Perlman-Dean. So they deliver on the accounting and finance module for the Senior Leader Apprenticeship. So Jenny Rose is an award-winning lecturer and the head of employability here at AMBS. And Patricia Perlman-Dean is a professor of finance with an extensive background in investment banking and wealth management. Now, I know they're going to do their own introductions. So without further ado, I shall hand over to Jenny and Patricia. Thank you.
Thank you. So do we now take control up here? So that was the technological bit, was right? Okay, fine. I think so. Right. Hello, everybody. Lovely to meet you. I'm Patricia.
And my name's Jenny Rose.
So, Jenny, I think you're first.
Yeah, so, excuse me, Patricia and I do both have quite a commercial background. So I worked as an auditor and Patricia worked in investment banking. So I trained as a chartered accountant many years ago and I trained with KPMG. And since then, that really informs the kind of approach that I take with my teaching, which tends to be very practical. It tends to be very experiential. So on the PG, we really do throw you in at the deep end. And one of the key things that we use, and I've used with quite a few different firms as well when I teach accounting, is a simulation where students get to make decisions and then see the effect of those decisions on the financial statement. So very experiential way of doing things. And I think that is what students really appreciate, and why I've been nominated for the awards that I have, which mainly result from students enjoying the programme and seeing the difference that it makes to them. So I think I do tend to push students hard. I do tend to be quite dialogic in my teaching. I don't have a set thing where I'll just talk accounting at you, but I prefer a dialogue and to explore what's really important to people. Another area that's really important to me, you can see the bottom left, is accounting for sustainability. So I'm very into embedding sustainability into accounting teaching. And I've worked with the FRC quite closely on this. And I'm actually working with the QAA at the moment, rewriting what accounting stands for, to incorporate the idea of accountability and accounting as a social and moral as well as technical job to do. I like talking a lot and I like seeing people doing things. So that gives you a flavour of me. And then over to Patricia. Do you want to explain your background and your teaching style?
Thank you, Jenny. So this is me. There's a lot of things on there. I'm not sure if the animations work, but I'm not even going to try it. So the picture at the top, I'm actually originally Swedish. So when you come into Jenny and my classes, we often play a bit of ABBA, and that's just to make me feel a bit at home and at ease. And it normally sets the tone quite well. Um, I've been to many different universities. Not that that is so important, but why it is important is because I've had the opportunity to live in many different countries, meet people from many different backgrounds, and it's really made me very curious and open-minded about what people want to take away from their learning as well. As Jenny said, I have for my sins, I used to be an investment banker working on big trading floors in London and New York of firms like Citigroup and JP Morgan and Nomura. And then life got in the way, and my husband is actually from Manchester, so I moved to Manchester and I joined Barclays Wealth as a wealth manager. So my intention was then not to try to lose people's money, hopefully making them more money. But I've always been involved in graduate recruitment, graduate training in all the firms I've been, and the opportunity came along to come to Manchester and start teaching there, and that was 10 years ago, and I'm now a professor of finance. I also, like Jenny, has a lot of involvement still with practitioners, so I sit on the IMC exam board. I'm a CFA charter holder, and yeah, just generally making sure that we keep the link with practice. Now, finance generally is considered to be quite a theoretical and numerical, and I jokingly say to be a good banker, you always need to make sure that 1 + 1 = 3, and then everything will be fine. But, you know, we're going to break down those barriers of the scary numbers as well. And Jenny does that in her accounting as well. And we try to just take it down a bit. But my teaching as well, quite similar to Jenny. I also use the simulation, which I'll tell you more about in a second. We'll spend a little bit of time of trying to explain concept. But again, same as Jenny, want you to have a go and practice and do mistakes, because that's how we learn, really. And it's a safe environment to do that. So I think it's fair to say that we both come from practitioner background, and we try to bring that into the classroom to make it relevant. Shall I kick off about finance then? Because this is a combined course, accounting and finance, and we will explore more what the differences are, but we also think they are quite aligned. So first things first, you know, what is finance? Well, loads of different things. It has things to do with you and me, if it's our pensions, our savings, if it's about the government wanting to do investment in infrastructure, they need to raise some funds, and they might issue government bonds, yeah, which we hopefully we're familiar with or learn more about. Now, having said all of that, the you know, the countries, etc., are full of businesses, and businesses also need to raise money, and that is finance, how they finance their expansion plans, etc. But in the end of the day, businesses also need to make things. So you then have for example, the commodities and agricultural market, which is also considered to be part of finance and trading around those. So it's basically everywhere. And therefore, I think it's important that we all feel hopefully a little bit more comfortable with it. Now, I couldn't do a course without referring to ChatGPT. So ChatGPT, if you ask ChatGPT what is finance, and it's actually, I think, is one of the better explanations, actually, that it involves the, you know, around financial system and making sure it's a wide range of activities, budgeting, forecasting, financial analysis, risk management, evaluation, and it's about using the financial system to allocate resources and generate more income. The textbook, says this. This is a bit more technical, but we'll talk about it in the sense of finance concerned with decision involving valuation of future cash flow and what effect is that. Whoa. What does that mean? I kind of think probably the ChatGPT one is easier, but we will demystify all of this, and we will take you through how you can get more comfortable in finance. So there are many different perspectives you can take on finance. And as I started off with that initial picture, there are quite a few people involved. So all the different people culminate into what's called the financial market. And that's like any other marketplace, really. People buy and sell financial assets. And we'll learn in the course more about these different type of financial assets, if it's shares and bonds, whatever it might be. Now, there are a number of people involved in this. So there are us, you and me and Jenny and everyone else who may have a bit of spare cash looking to invest, or we might save for our pension and we might want to buy some shares and bond, which we need to use the financial markets for. There are what we call financial intermediaries. So these are our pension providers, our fund managers, our bank managers, all these people that can help to facilitate what we need to do in finance. And then, of course, we've got the companies, because if the companies are not there, then what are we investing in? That we can't really buy shares in them. So they have many different ways they can look at financing. Is for many of you that work for different businesses as well, it's corporate finance tend to be focused on finance within the business rather than necessarily so much the outside world. And we'll look at both sides. And then, of course, we can't forget the government, because in the end of the day, they need to be road and infrastructures and hospitals and schools. And for that, they need to raise money. It's not all about taxes. There's actually also ways the government is involved in the financial market. So this is basically what I've said already. Why does your business need to raise finance? Well, there are three simple things, really. They want to grow the business. They might be looking to refinance. They might have some debt. They might pay that down. They might get a better deal. Or they might be looking to buy or sell the part of their business. And it's all part of it. But the one thing they've got in common is that they really need money. And that's what finance is about. Now, I've just put here, and again, this is a company hopefully that many of us are familiar with, Metro Bank. It was the first high street bank to open for hundreds of years. And here is just an article from late last year where they're saying they need to raise more finance. Yeah, so this is a bank needing to raise more finance. What's that all about? Well, a bank, like any other company, needs money to be able to finance and grow their business. So it's closer than we think. Now, I did say there was going to be a bit of numbers. So let me ask you this question. Assume you have won the £340 million jackpot. Right, what would you prefer? Would you like to receive 30 annual payments of 11.3 million every year for 30 years? Or would you like the lump sum paid up front? Now, okay, you might think, don't really trust myself getting all the money up front. Or might think, you know what, I've got a great investment opportunity. Or might be, you know what, it might be better if I can get it over the time. That's a personal choice. Now, financially, though, there is an answer to this as well. Okay. And what we're going to equip you with is for you to be able to use what we call time value of money calculations, which is basically calculations around trying to work out what something might be worth in the future, what something might be worth today, how much I need to pay on an annual basis. So, for example, anything in relation to your mortgage, your pension contribution, your credit card, all those calculations around that. And it's called what we call time value of money. So this is where the little spreadsheet comes in. So here is an example of the type of things we might be looking at. You're looking to invest £1,000 today. You can receive an annual return of 6%. What will the value of your investment be in 5 years' time? Okay. And we will talk you through all of this on how you can do this. So this is a calculation that's actually quite useful on a daily basis, whether you save for a holiday, or if you need to pay school fees or university fees or new car, whatever it might be. There are ways of working all this out. We will also look at what we call capital budgeting. So this is when within a business, you might be presented with different investment opportunities. How do you know which of these investment opportunities you should be going for? And I'm sure for those of you who may or may not work in finance, you may say, oh, the budgeting department tells me I can't do it. Well, what is the budgeting department doing? How can they tell you this, you can do this, but you can't do that? So we're going to equip you with some tools that you can start evaluating projects yourself, or when the terminology comes your way, you can question it. You can ask, well, what do you mean by that? What are the assumptions you made? And you can challenge some of these decisions. But we'll equip you with those tools, and net present value, internal rate of return, and payback are some of the methods that we'll teach you. To round off, we will turn the classroom into a trading floor. Okay, not as mad as it sounds there, but it tends to get quite hectic and people are getting quite emotional and quite involved. And the reason why we do this is because we want to give you the opportunity to feel what it's like to make your investment decisions. Okay, so it can come across as quite scary and it might come across as quite extreme, but we often find it's a really good opportunity to try to make sure you understand a little bit more about the markets, how you evaluate information, and then you can make a decision to invest or not to invest, whether this is for your pension, for your spare cash, or whatever it might be. So, we'll be covering a lot of different things, but what we just talked briefly about here is that who is involved in finance? Basically everybody. We're going to throw some numbers and some calculation at you, but hey, the numbers that are actually really good to be able to know how to calculate, like your mortgage, your student debt, if you have those, you want to save for holiday, you want to save for your pension, and all this later foundation for being able to value a company. Okay, to be able to value a business, because in the end of the day, you hear all this, the share price went up, the market value went up. What does all that mean? And we're going to completely demystify that and talk about different ways a company can choose to finance themselves. And then we're going to teach you how you can value a company yourself. We're going to go on to talk about, I said, capital budgeting. What project should a company take on? Yeah, so you can know if your investments are valid. And then, as I said, finally, we're going to have a chance to trade our own investments. And that's it in finance. Have I missed anything, Jenny? It's a lot to cover in a few weeks, but time is money, as they say, so you've got to lay on it. But we have a lot of fun. And also, what I should say, actually, the accounting and finance, we intertwine them. We make sure they're delivered in a timely manner. So it generally is every second week accounting, every second week finance, and then in the workshop, it all comes together. Jenny,
Brilliant.
can you
Thank
take
you very
control
much.
over this now?
Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry. If you go up in the left-hand corner, something says take control.
Yeah, got it. I've got control.
There you go. I'm not going to take it back now. There you go.
Lovely. So that's Patricia talk about finance, and I think finance is it's very important. It's very important to the accounts, but I still think quite a lot of the areas that Patricia talks about are made up numbers, whereas my accounting numbers are very much based on the items cost in the past, and therefore they are more measurable. And we have this discussion ongoing throughout the accounting and finance course. So you start to see some of the difference between accounting and finance. But before I go into that and tell you how reliable accounting is, can you tell me in the chat box what your dream job would be? Just humour me for a second. So just type into the chat box what you think your dream job would be. I'm going to ask Patricia while she's here. What's your dream job, Patricia?
I want to be a West End artist.
That definitely comes across in your teaching.
Right.
In a good way.
But,
in a good way.
Yeah, no, in a good way, kind of. Yeah, I think so. That was probably my main thing, because I think no one can tell you wrong. You're just entertaining people and have a good time.
Yeah.
Sing. Oh, see, I've got my fellow singer there, Anne-Marie. You're joining me in the band. Yeah, we're on it.
Helicopter pilot.
Anyone
else want to talk to us? Let's see if we can get one more. My dream job would definitely be UN Goodwill Ambassador, but I have to get famous first, so that's what I'm in the process of doing. I've got an actor and a film director as well. So surprisingly, or not surprisingly, or like usual, nobody said accountant. And it's often not seen as a dream job, which is a shame in many ways. Accountants often see people as one of these two criteria. So it's a problem someone who solves a problem you didn't know you had and or you don't understand. And you do precision guesswork based on reliable data provided by those with questionable knowledge. So accounts can often seem like a very strange way of representing numbers. But what I talk about is how the way accounts are presented help us make future decisions based on reliable historical information. So I teach students not to be afraid of the numbers. Many people come into classes saying that numbers are not their thing, or they don't want to be, they don't know the details, they want to pass the numbers over to someone else. But actually, the numbers are everything, and the accounts that the company produces are the only communication that the company has with the outside world, the only way that we can actually hold companies accountable for what they do. And these companies are bigger than countries. So I talk about the aims being thinking about this financial wizard. I want to turn people into financial wizards. I think accountants make accountancy sound overly complex, where actually, if you can just get a little bit of information about the principles and the basis of accounts, actually you can interpret accounts in a very straightforward way, so enable you to have a bit of confidence when you get the numbers put in front of you that you know what they mean. And this iceberg represents that. And finally, I think it's important to think about accounting as telling a story. So accounts tell a story about what the business has done that year. And some of it's factual, some of it's checked, some of it's audited, and some of it is just discussion around that. So it's that telling a story, and that's one of the key things that we focus on throughout the accounting lectures, that we're using these numbers to tell a story. So if you don't like numbers, that's okay. What we can do is show you how those numbers tell a story and bring a company to life. I'm really keen to make sure that everyone understands what's under the surface. So the accounts are the bits you see on top, but with a bit of guidance, a bit of knowledge, a few extra skills, you can start to really work out what's underneath based on just seeing that top bit. So that top bit, I talk a lot about what's in financial statements, and we look at sets of financial statements. You have a shiny cover with lots of pictures on, but it's not objectives. Companies can put whatever they want on this. It's a marketing document. You have reports from all the different directors. You have directors' remuneration. You can find out what your directors are paid. You can find out their approach to sustainability, to audit committees, to risk, to corporate governance. So you have all these reports, but they are not checked by the auditors. You have some main statements. You might have heard of them before: the income statement, the statement of financial position, cash flow, statement of changes in equity. So we have these formal statements that are produced and notes that explain the statements. And when you're reading financial statements, you might assume that actually all the financial statements are being checked by someone, but actually it's only these main statements and the notes that follow international financial reporting standards, so have to be produced in a certain way, and it's only the main statements and the notes that are audited. So making sure that we know which parts are checked and which parts are not is a really important thing, so you can understand what's going on underneath the company when you see those numbers in front of you. And the final thing I just want to talk about financial accounting before we open it up to any questions that you've got is about the basis upon which the accounts are prepared. So accounts do look a bit strange, and they do look not like the cash, not always the same as the cash going in and out of a company. But that's because they're trying to be relevant to the users. They're trying to enable users to make predictions about the future or confirm what they know about the company. And if you understand the accruals basis the accounts are on, then you can start to be able to make those future predictions yourself. They're also trying to faithfully represent what's really going on in the company. So there shouldn't be any bias, there shouldn't be any material errors, any big errors, and they should be complete, containing all information. So those characteristics mean that what we have in accounts shows you what the company owns, so what they have control of, all their assets. It shows what they owe to their lenders and to their suppliers, and it also shows you what's left over, what the remaining elements that they owe to their shareholders. And we talk a lot about that accounting equation and how that balances, and how that balances within accounts, teaching you to read what's in the financial statements, what you see at the top of the iceberg, so that you can understand what's going on underneath. And it's all based on that idea of materiality. So small errors don't matter so much in accounting. We're always looking for the bigger errors there. And what's really fascinating to me about this is that these characteristics don't just define financial information now, holding companies accountable for their finances and their purchases and how they're using the shareholders and the lenders' money. But these are the same kind of characteristics that you see in sustainability reporting, because the ISSB, which is are the people that are governing the new standards, are a part of the International Financial Reporting Standards. So they've really taken the lead on how to get companies to report this. So not only can we hold companies accountable for their the way that they use the cash that they're given, but also the way that they affect the people and the planet. So we can start to make sure they have items in their report that are relevant, that are useful to people reading the accounts, and that are objective. And that's what's lacking at the moment in terms of holding companies accountable for the sustainability. And we are seeing that a little bit with these new standards, and it's constantly evolving. So it's quite fascinating when you think if you can understand accounts, then you can start to understand some of that really rapidly evolving sustainability accounting. So I want to show you what's underneath the iceberg, how accounts are constructed, how they're put together, how the decisions that are made in the business come out in terms of their numbers, so that when you have numbers in front of you, you can then look back into the accounts and work out where they came from, what the story that these numbers are trying to tell you. And that's the main part of my presentation there. And I'd love to take some questions off you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jenny. And thank you to Patricia. I'm someone who is a bit daunted by numbers and finance, and that really helped to demystify things for me. And I can see how like learning these could really be quite transformative in somebody's career. So if anybody has any questions, please do pop them in the chat. I know I have a couple, which I might jump in on if nobody gets there before me. So I was wondering, Jenny, you were talking about dream jobs. I was wondering then how you sort of got into this field, what appealed to you, at a young age, that it was it a dream job for you, or is it something that you kind of grew into, or yeah?
Really good question. No, it was never a dream job. And when my students tell me that accounting is a dream job for them, I don't usually believe them. But I do like to hold, I like to hold individuals and corporations accountable for what they do. So accountant definitely wasn't my dream job, but it does frustrate me when organisations are not held accountable. So I focus much more on accountability. And as I worked at KPMG, I was starting to get towards some of that sustainability accounting. But that was nearly 20 years ago, where it was very, very much on the periphery. So having got into teaching and then starting here at the university, it was really important to me that accountancy is not just about numbers and this is the right way to do things, but actually it's about holding companies accountable. And it's not just companies, but it's governing bodies like the FRC, who I speak to quite a lot. We had I organised a conference with them last November about how we can teach sustainability in our accounting classes. And IFAC were there, who are the International Financial Reporting Council. So they were also Financial Accounting Council, but people who set the standards were there having these conversations, because I think we need to hold them to account as well. We need to make sure that the standards continue to evolve so that ordinary people can understand accounts. And that's so important when companies are so large. If you think about our health and those companies that have provided vaccines that have kept us out of lockdown, actually, if Accenture or AstraZeneca or Pfizer, if those companies collapsed and couldn't produce vaccines anymore, we could really easily end up back in those situations that we were 4 years ago. So I think we need to remember the huge impact that these large companies can have on our day-to-day lives and hold them accountable. So it's up to us to understand the numbers that are in them to be able to hold those companies accountable.
Yeah, I love that. Accounting for the greater good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so we've got a question here, but I think that might be slightly more around what Avila is going to touch on later. So Lucy, if you are having to pop off, this will be recorded and sent out, and we'll cover everything around applying and that. Is that what you mean by next steps? Or did you want to ask Jenny something about next steps within the programme? Just see what she replies there. And while she's just replying there, I was curious as to when you were speaking there about whether you think that there's a bit more awareness of this needing to hold companies accountable with sort of within the media and within scandals over the past few years. Do you think it's something that people are becoming more aware of, and it's, you know, a bit more of a hot topic these days?
Yeah, I think so. I have no shortage of news reports about scandals and companies collapsing, which makes my life a lot easier when I bring all that into the classroom. But actually, I think we tend to hold companies accountable for things like their tax. So Starbucks doesn't pay enough tax, but actually Starbucks pays the legal amount of tax that it's required to pay. It doesn't do anything illegal. It just structures its tax affairs to maximize the profit for shareholders, which is what the company is there to do. So I think we need to I think we focus too much on things like tax scandals and not enough on the fact that companies like Shell have an annual report, which is the way that they're held accountable to the public, which is covered in images of blue skies, blue sea, green grass, and talks a lot about their sustainability efforts, which is such a small part of their work. I think companies are really allowed to greenwash and they're allowed to beef up their green credentials when actually it's a very small part of their business. And the companies are criticised for minimising their tax liability, where in fact that's nothing they've got no control over that. They are just structuring their tax affairs in accordance with the law. So it's actually the politicians who should be holding accountable for created these loopholes that companies can then jump through. So I think often we get accountability in the media is often misplaced. And I think we need to go back to financial statements, understanding financial statements, so that we can understand certainly the companies we work for, the companies that we're interested in, and the big companies that make a difference to our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I can see someone's typing, and so I just want to give them a chance to ask that question. And then I'll hand over to Avila. While they're typing, is there like a piece of advice? Oh, here we go. Do we need more regulation, or is the current system of self-regulation enough?
Really good question. I think we need more regulation around sustainability reporting. Quite frankly, it's ridiculous what a company can report. I set a lot of tasks for my students, asking them to look out for greenwashing in financial statements, and even some of the students can't spot when companies are simply talking about letting their employees go off for a day and paint something, which is really quite irrelevant and doesn't really give the reader an idea about whether this company is a green or ethical company or not. So I think you need more regulation around selling yourself as a green entity or greenwashing and what you can report sustainability wise. I think a lot of the regulation around the way accounts are presented is, yeah, it is enough. I think it's misunderstood that companies' accounts are very, very judgmental and very, very based on estimates. People see numbers in accounts as black and white. That is the profit, whereas actually it's our profit, it's our way of interpreting standards. There's much more of an art than a science. So I think that the regulation is there, and I wouldn't like to get more regulation, but I would like more explanation so that people are really clear that the numbers they see in front of them aren't the black and white truth. They aren't the only truth. They're an interpretation of financial standards designed to be relevant to them and designed to faithfully represent what's really going on in the company, but that they're not the only solution. People see it as very black and white, and accounting is not black and white. Also got utility companies. Oh, don't get me started on utility companies. Absolutely, it's horrendous. The utility companies that they've been privatized. The amount they pay out in profits, in dividends, they pay out the profits in dividends to private shareholders gets me so frustrated. And you can see the lack of investment and the short-term decisions that are made by a private company, and that lack of accountability. So yeah, I think we need different rules for this kind of idea of having no competition because you can't choose your water provider, and then that provider not investing in the infrastructure that it needs to invest in, and instead paying out millions of pounds, billions of pounds in dividends to shareholders is really frustrating. And you can see in their accounts, it's not hard to see how much is money's flowing out of the company. It's really saddening to see that that's allowed to happen. Better stop there.
Love the passion. No, that's amazing. So finally, I'd just love to know if there are any pieces of advice that you might give to someone who's thinking about applying for the programme, or any final words for them.
I'd say that finance and accounting are so critical to being in a leadership position. It makes me really uncomfortable with people running companies that aren't comfortable with numbers. That don't know what accounts mean. I don't think accounts are particularly a fantastic way of presenting information. I think there's better ways of doing it, but they are the way that's how the business world runs. So I think if you are going to be a leader, you need to be comfortable with numbers. You need to be comfortable with explaining how to finance ideas that you've got, how to justify projects, and also need to be comfortable with understanding what happens in financial statements. So I think if you don't feel that sense of comfort, something like this will really help you be able to sit in a boardroom, be confident, and at least be able to ask the right questions. So I think accounting and finance are a vital part of life. And if you've never had the chance to study it, and it frustrates me that it's not in school syllabuses and so on before, but if you've never had the chance to get comfortable with it, I think this is a really good opportunity that you have to feel that sense of confidence and comfort that can come from a little bit of knowledge layered over the rest of your knowledge to enable you to be an effective leader.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you so much for joining us, Jenny. That's been incredibly insightful. And I'm sure everybody's found that really useful, and hopefully we'll have a lot of people who are looking to join. So thank you very much, and thank you to Patricia who joined us earlier as well. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Avila, who's going to talk a little bit more about the Level 7 Senior Leader Apprenticeship.
Thank you, Rosie. So I'll just wait for the slides to change here, and then we can get going. So as Rosie touched on, you've been really lucky today to get a little bit of a snippet from the Postgraduate Diploma Senior Leadership Programme that Jenny and Patricia both teach on. So what the programme is the postgraduate diploma, but there is the option to top up to the master's level. The next slide will just outline a little bit more about what the programme itself entails. So it is levy funded. So for those of you who are at an organisation paying into the levy, 100% of the fees will be covered by it. For those of you based at smaller organisations, fear not, because we can look into getting most of the costs covered as well. We can have those conversations. As mentioned, it's 18 months in duration. It is a postgraduate diploma with the option to top up to a master's. So essentially you would hand back the postgraduate diploma and instead finish with the master's, senior leadership master's, that is. As with any apprenticeship, you are studying as you work, which means you're lucky enough that you can apply what you learn as you learn. So what will you cover? The programme itself is broken down into 6 main topics. So today we were lucky enough to get a snippet into the finance and accounting leaders. So I'll very much leave that in the capable hands of Patricia and Jenny, who have given you good insight into that one. But looking at some of the other topics that you will study. So we actually start with the authentic leadership and culture. So in this topic, we're kind of having a look at yourself, how you lead, what is your kind of values-based leadership currently? Has that changed as part of things like post-pandemic, etc.? We then move on to Unit 2, which is the strategic management in global context. So we're looking a little bit more at your organisation in Unit 2. So who are your competitors? That's both locally and globally. What's your kind of marketing brand, and does that reflect the values that your organisation stands for? Having looked at you and your organisation in a bit of detail, we then move on to Unit 3, which is the organisational behaviour and performance. So we're kind of looking at things like employee engagement, maybe potentially leadership blind spots. So really honing into the behavioral side of you and your organization here. Unit 4 is innovation and change in a digital world. So a fairly big topic for Unit 4. And we're looking at things change capability, change agency, how your senior leadership team deal with change, disruptive technologies, big data. So a very relevant topic currently. And then the final topic that we haven't covered yet is sustainability and environmental social governance. So looking at some of the stuff that is kind of corporate integrity and governance. So kind of complementing what Jenny touched on earlier as well. So that's the big topics that we cover, and they are across the 18 months, each one of them looking around 10 weeks for each one of those. So who is the program aimed at? Who is it for? So it's for middle level managers aspiring to those senior leader roles. So we work off a framework. It's a senior leader framework. So we can be confident that upon completion of this program, you have the knowledge, skills and behavior to be not only an effective leader currently, but also equipping you for the future. As we mentioned, it is for middle level managers. So if you already find yourself as a senior leader in your organization, this may not be the program for you. We do have a range of other courses that we can discuss, and we're more than happy to kind of look into what is a middle level manager currently. We get some questions around where would you consider me, middle or senior, etc. So we will deal with that on a case by case manner. So please do reach out if you do have any questions regarding your suitability for the program. So how is it structured? It's very much a blended approach with this program. So you will have online components, you will have in-person, and you'll have both group and individual components as well as assignments. So the in-person requires you to come on here on campus. We have a lovely executive education building, and they will be either 2 or 3 consecutive day workshops. They come around the end of each of those 10-week topics that we talked about. So that's the online component. That's the in-person component. Sorry, the online component is made up of both submission of assessments, but you may also tune in for some teaching online as well. It's very much designed for that relevance and application. So as I mentioned earlier, the joy of the apprenticeship is you should be able to apply what you're learning as you do it. So you'll see those real tangible benefits for both you and your organisation as you move through the 18 months. We have increased our study break, so there is now 3 as opposed to our previous 2. So they fall around summer, spring and kind of around that winter time break as well. One of the other changes we made was just decreasing the actual duration. So the 18 months is slightly quicker than previous delivery, which is good news for yourselves as the learners. And it's very much a 3-way stream throughout in terms of support. So you as the learner will have support from both the provider, being ourselves, in the form of your tutor, but also all the other academics that you're taught by. And in terms of the employer, we will ask you to identify what we call work-based mentor. There's someone in your organisation who can kind of be your point of contact for both pastoral but also kind of academic questions as part of your time on the programme with ourselves. So we're confident that you should feel very much supported and thoroughly enjoy, most importantly, the 18-month programme. So entry routes. So we are governed by the ESFA, so kind of funding rules because it is an apprenticeship. And some of these are regarding your eligibility in terms of entry routes. So we do ask for a degree in 3. So if you find yourself with a 2-1 or above, we would ask for 3 years management experience. No degree or 2-1 or below is not a problem. We just ask for 5 years managerial experience. And we would also ask that you have your maths and English GCSE C or above, or your equivalent, which can be level 2 functional skills, for example, before starting the programme. As mentioned, we are governed by some of those strict rules. One of the ways to kind of get a real good insight of whether you would be eligible or not is by completing our online checker. So it only takes minutes to complete, but it does look at some of those kind of immediate stumbling blocks so that we can save your time in terms of applying and having conversations with ourselves. So it'll look at some of the things on the previous slide, but also things like, are you working in England at the moment, etc. So that would be the first point of contact that we would ask you to kind of complete. On the next slide, we can see where that fits into in terms of the whole application process. So Rosie's just popped the link to the checker in there for us. We would encourage anyone who is interested in the programme, that's a good first point of contact with ourselves. Based on that, you will then, if eligible, receive what we call an expression of interest form. We do ask that you would complete that and return it along with an up-to-date CV to myself. And that allows us to really have a look at your eligibility and also your suitability. Is this a good time for you? What do you want to get from the programme? You'll see in step 2 that we do encourage those conversations with your employer early. Step 3 does highlight that it is by employer nomination that you can get onto this course because we're using the levy. It's also a good opportunity to have conversations. You know, we're asking you to put aside a minimum of 8 hours a week of off-the-job training time. So this will involve kind of delegating some work, passing work on potentially. So it's good to have those conversations with your immediate team as well as maybe your L&D and HR team in terms of, have you done apprenticeships in your organisation before? If you are eligible and you do have the support of your employer, that's when we would invite you to apply using our online system. So we use a system called Aptem. This will involve a kind of personal statement, but also things like skill mapping so that you can see where you are on those KSBs versus where you'll be when you finish the apprenticeship. Finally, we do an interview, and if all successful and we get employer sign off, we will then happily welcome you on to our November start. So in terms of the next cohort, that will be November 24. Applications actually open May 1st, which is next week, and they'll stay open for roughly around 10 weeks, so close in that kind of mid-July time. We will close early if we do fill our spaces in advance, so we would stress to get in there rather than waiting until the latter stages of the application process. I think that's probably a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the programme, but myself and Rosie are more than happy to take questions. So our emails are on these slides, and I believe we'll be circulating the presentation from today as well. But more than happy to have conversations, have team calls with anyone, whether it's for yourself or for your organisation. As Jenny alluded to earlier, it's a fantastic programme and very much transformational. So we are more than happy to facilitate those conversations. And I will hand back over to Rosie to conclude.
Brilliant. Thank you, Avila. Yeah, that's everything. So thank you so much to everybody for joining. We'll be sending a follow-up email with a link to the recording, so feel free to share that amongst your colleagues as well. Massive thank you to Jenny Rhodes and Patricia Perlman-Dean for joining us and sharing their insights. Yeah, please do get in touch if you have any questions or would like to continue a discussion offline. So yeah, thank you very much.